Hey guys, Brother Kevin coming to you with Midweek. We're going to be talking again in the book of Mark. We're continuing. We got a few more weeks, not many, but we're talking this week about what it means to be a disciple of Jesus, and we're in Mark. We're in chapter 10. If you want to, you can go ahead and turn down to Mark 10 down to verse 35. And so we're going to be reading that in just a minute from 35 to 45. And last week we talked about what it means that we have this relationship with Jesus and we do what Jesus wants us to do. He talked about if we deny ourselves and take up our cross and follow him, then we will be doing exactly what he's asked us to do. And we talked about what that means. And here's as simply as I can put it for you. Following Jesus with everything that you do, say, and believe. You know, we give up what we want to do what Jesus wants in our life. And that's what it means to take up your cross. It means that, there may be a time when you're persecuted for your faith. Hopefully right now that's not the case, but Jesus tells us that we're going to suffer if we know him. And the disciples were no different. Even the closest people to him suffered some of the worst things that could happen for your faith. And so he's telling them to take up their cross. It means that they were to give everything to him and hold nothing back. And in everything that they do, follow him. And so this week we're going to be talking about Mark 10:35. And it's kind of a story that starts out a little bit like they always do when we talk about the disciples. They just aren't quite getting what's going on. And James and John come to Jesus and they ask him for something that's not theirs to ask for, okay? And so, and then Jesus goes on to explain our point today, that we are to be a servant to all if we are going to be in a relationship with him. If we are going to be a disciple of his, we are going to be a servant, okay? And so, let me read this for you. It's in, again, Mark 10. I'm going to start at verse 35. Jesus and John, the sons of Zebedee, approached Jesus and said, "Teacher, we want you to do whatever we ask you." Very presumptuous. All right, I'm going to read for you again. Mark 10, verse 35, starting in verse 35. James and John, the sons of Zebedee, approached him and said, "Teacher, we want you to do whatever we ask you." "And what do you want me to do?" he asked. And they asked him, "Allow us to sit at your right and at your left in your glory." Jesus said to them, "You do not know what you are asking. Are you able to drink the cup that I drink, or be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with?" And they say, "We are able." They think they are, but they're not. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. And Jesus said to them, "You will drink the cup I drink, and you will be baptized with the baptism I am baptized with. But to sit at my right and left is not mine to give. Instead, it is for those for whom it has been prepared." And verse 41 says this: "Then the 10 disciples heard this, and they began to be indignant." It means they were mad. They were mad at James and John. Jesus called them over and said to them, "You know that those who are regarded as rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and those in high position act as tyrants over them." It means like they would look at the Romans that were over them, the Gentiles that were over them, and the Romans, they would control people, right? And they were mean, and they would always do what they wanted and force the people to do it. That's what it means to be a tyrant over someone. "But it is not among you." This is verse 43. "On the contrary, whoever wants to become great among you will be your servant, and whoever wants to be first among you will be slave to all." This is one of my favorite verses, verse 45. It's one I learned at a very early age. "For even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many." Now we're going to talk about what that means. We're going to break down this passage just a little bit. So Jesus sets out as an example for us to be servants in the very end. But let's talk about James and John at the beginning. James and John, they're asking for power. They are asking to be on the right and left of Jesus in his kingdom. They want to rule over people. And in this moment, Jesus says, listen, the Romans, the Gentiles, those people, They rule over people. But if you want to be the greatest in my kingdom, you're going to have to be a servant, the servant to all people. And and Jesus tells them, listen, I don't give that power. And this he even said, but to sit on my right and left is not mine to give. Instead, it is for those who it has been prepared. And so they were hanging on to a statement that was made by Jesus before, that his disciples would help rule over his kingdom. But what they're doing is they're asking for power. They're not asking because they want to be a servant or because they really want to be doing what Jesus wants them to do in this moment. They're asking because they want to be the greatest among the disciples. And man, when the disciples hear this, they get upset. They do not like this at all. Why are y'all asking about, I can hear them saying, now this is not in the scripture, this is Kevin, right? But why are y'all asking Jesus for that? Y'all just want to be in the front of the line, you know what I mean? Have you guys ever been at school when they say line up, and there's always that one kid, and you may be that kid, I don't know. That one kid who wants to be at the very beginning of the line. They always have to be the leader. I'm the leader. I'm the first in line, right? We see that example all the time. But Jesus says, James and John are coming. They want to be first in line, just like most kids do. But listen, Jesus says, if you want to be in mine, you have to be a servant to all, which would mean you'd be last in line. And you would let everybody else go in front of you. Why? Because you're allowing them, you're serving them in that way. Man, that's hard to do. It's hard to put yourself in that situation, but that's what Jesus calls us to do. He calls us to be a servant to all. When we think about when we at church, and people are asking to do certain things, to line up or to be the first in line to eat. What about taking a back seat and saying, "Oh, I'm going to let everybody else go before I go"? That's just a simple way that you can serve people. When somebody needs something to drink or something to eat, Jesus says if you give them a drink of water or you give them something to eat in my name, you're being a servant in my name. Those are just great examples. Now I want to key in on one thing, this last verse. It says, Jesus said this, for even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. That's Mark 10:45. Now, Jesus, if anyone deserved on earth to be worshiped and to be praised and to be a ruler, it would have been Jesus, right? He is the Son of God. But he laid aside that Godship. It says in Philippians 2, it says he put aside what he wanted to become in flesh for us. And he became a servant to all of us when he died on the cross for us. Jesus is a perfect example of what a servant is. He is servant to all. All he ever did with his whole entire life was serve people and serve others. Now think about that. That's hard to do. Why? Because he was perfect. We're not. We're not perfect. But Jesus was perfect in everything he said, everything he did for people. Isn't that amazing? I just love thinking about the fact that he sets that example for us, that when he says to be greatest, you've got to be the least. And that means that we're the servant of all people. So as you grow as a disciple, I want you to think about that. What does it mean that you put others in front of yourself? It doesn't mean that you're weak. It doesn't mean that you're always, you can't always stand up for what Jesus wants. That's not what I'm talking about. Or stand up for what you believe would be a better way to say that. It just means that when time comes and you have to serve others, you do it with a glad heart. And you do it because Jesus wants us to. You don't do it out of a hard heart, like, I don't want to do that, but I'm going to do it anyway because I need to. No, I want you to, in your heart, to say, Jesus has done this for me, and I want to do this for other people. That's what it means to be a true disciple of his. Hey guys, I love you as always, and just take this time to think about what are these true markers of being a disciple. That we love Jesus, that we do everything for him, that we follow what he says, that we deny ourselves and take up our cross, and that we are a servant to all people. Love you guys. See you later.